We appreciate the school board's attention and for coming tonight and everybody in the audience. I do just have one final request of the board. I'll read it to you. There are additional stakeholders who are here tonight to voice the information they apparently believe is relevant to your decision tonight. Their statements are not part of the union's case, and they do not represent the union. However, you have the authority to grant them the opportunity to speak. This is within the board's purview. This is a public school board meeting, and public comment should be permitted. You have the authority to allow this, and I encourage you to do so. Remember, even though this is an impasse hearing, it is also a public school board meeting. It is therefore important for the board to hear everyone out.
Yes. I assume that I'm getting started to my left and come across and each board member wishes to have everything to say at this time.
That's correct.
Start with the left.
Start with Melissa. Oh, I'm sorry. This one. Okay, yeah, sorry. That's right. Okay.
Ms. Freitas?
I'll defer my comments if I could. I'd like to defer my comments.
Can't hear you.
I mean to pull the mic up and I forgot. I would like to defer my comments. Rita, would you mind coming to the front? And I guess the question I have to you relates to what was presented as far as the information that was provided to the school board was possibly not accurate and that we did not know. Can I find the page real quick? And that our own budget, I'm assuming the school board members is $3,133,110.
Okay, let me clarify a few things. The question that you just asked me is, the reason that budget is that amount is because the state dictates to us in the, what is called the Red Book, how we account for certain types of expenditures. So, for example, in addition to, most of the time people think school board budget is the budget for the school board members and any supplies and equipment that you might use. Well, yes, that is part of the budget, but the other part that's reflected in your budget under Function 7200 is legal services, is property and casualty. Wait a minute, let me finish. It's property and casualty insurance, it's insurance claims liability, and that is an actuarial amount that has to be budgeted, and the state is the one that dictates what function that is reflected in, and that is why that particular budget, looks like it is, higher than what you would think for 5 board members and the operation of your office. The other thing that I would like to clarify is that when we're looking at the 14 million that was discussed, you have to remember that last year and the year before, the district received several $millions in ERA funds, and those ERA funds are accounted for in federal funds. And tonight, we have only been talking about the general fund. So when we received that money and we used it to fund positions, that was reflected in your federal funds. That money has now gone away, so now I have to budget that money back in the general fund. So that's why you see a huge increase in salaries in the general fund. Now what you'll have to look at is at the end of the year, are we off $14 million? And we will not be. It's simply because of all the different funding resources that the state and the federal government has passed on to all school districts, to help fill in the gap of the budget cuts that we've had, and those have been federal dollars. And tonight we've only talked about general fund dollars, so and that is the truth. And anybody can come look at that if they would like. But that's the clarification on that.
And it was required that those funds be used for salaries. That's why the 14 million shifted.
Yes, some of them were specifically salaries only.
So we don't have much. So,
No, we don't
How much?
And if I can just finish, we don't have we don't have just $14 million budgeted extra. A majority of that money is because of what I just said, the shifting of the expenditures in the federal and the general fund. Now, another piece is that anytime you see the salaries, we are never going to spend exactly what we budget, because the other thing that everyone has to remember is that I have to be prepared to pay terminal leave. That is, when people retire, I have to be prepared to pay their sick leave and their annual leave and their retirement bonus if they go out the first year that they're eligible. Now, there is no way financially that I can budget for all that is owed, and no district can. So we budget on a pay-as-you-go. But the other thing we have to keep in mind is that when you look at the instructional staff, a third of the instructional staff is in the top step. So at any given point in time, depending on how many people retire, that in 1 year that amount varies. So it's a combination of things when you start looking at that 14 million, but you'll never see a budget equals expenditures and the delta is zero. I mean, that's never going to happen, but there's not a fluff of $14 million in salaries. And I used that, I said fluff because that was the implication that was being discussed, was that we had budgeted $14 million more than what we needed, and that's not accurate. Now, when you're looking at the financials, if you don't know all of those nuances about, we got federal money in the last 3 years, and we've had to shift expenditures. Now that money's gone away. Now we've got to go back and budget it in the general fund. People are not going to know that. So when that comment is made, I don't take it as somebody trying to say we're doing a bad thing or a wrong thing. It's just that they're not aware of all the nuances of the budget.
Ms. Gowan, answer my question.
While you're up there, Rita, could you explain the reserve fund balances? Because that was also mentioned in the association's presentation, unreserved fund balances, and kind of explain how, while they're unreserved, there are restrictions on those unreserved funds, and also go into what were required by the state percentage-wise and the reasons for that, and also bond rating implications and things of that nature too, please. Okay.
The slide that was up there that for this current year, that entire slide at the top, it said unreserved fund balance, and I just needed to clarify that is total fund balance. That is restricted. It is reserved for designation and unreserved. So those amounts you saw are a combination of all of those components, okay? Now, out of that money, there are reserves that are legally required. Like, for example, inventory encumbrances. Then you move into, the other one that's required is the insurance claims liability. And we only budget that at 70%. That's not budgeted at 100%, but those are ones that are restricted. Then you move to reserves that are, by GASB 54, they're called unreserved, but they're unreserved designated. That means that the board has designated those reserves for a particular purpose. Now that does not mean that those reserves cannot be changed, but they are designated. And then you move into the third component, which is unrestricted. Okay, so unrestricted, right now, we have approximately, at the end of 2011, we had approximately $9 million, and this is round numbers, it really was $8,900,000 something. But anyway, that equates to about 4.76%. The state requires us to have a minimum of 3%. If you go below 3%, then they will send in a team to help you develop a financial plan that will get you back to at least 3%. Now, in addition to that, fiscal prudency usually dictates at least a 5%. And if you go out and you look at the authoritative books and the authoritative boards that govern accounting, they would tell you 10%. Well, while we would like to have 10% unrestricted, that's not reality. So anyway, so that's the $9 million there that is totally unrestricted, and it has not been designated. Now, the portion that is designated by the board, but that through a collective board decision could be, could be allocated however they would choose, is such things as school projects, okay? So school discretionary balances, those are the balances that the schools have rolled forward. We as a district have adopted site-based management, and so schools have actually been using some of those balances to be able to provide services that otherwise they wouldn't be able to provide. And then there's also...
Like a reading teacher, for instance?
Well, there are some schools that have purchased like half of a reading teacher in the district funds. The other half, there are schools that have purchased art, music, that otherwise they may not be able to if they didn't have those roll forward balances.
So let's go back for just a minute to the unrestricted, that fund balance is $9 million. And we have 4.76%.
Right.
Now, the state requires us to keep 3%, or we have to, they're going to send in somebody to help us figure out
Yes,
how to do
That
it.
doesn't end fine.
But 5% is not just recommended for school districts. That's pretty much an accounting thing across the board. That's just a good, prudent way. I mean, a businessman
Right.
that runs a business or a businesswoman, their goal would be to have a minimum of 5% in reserves, right?
And unrestricted.
Right, okay. I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
And then also included in those unreserved designated balances are project reserves. So when you start looking at those reserves, you have to look at what is the source of that reserve. For example, you'll see Florida teacher lead dollars. Well, that's a reserve, but that money can't be used for raises. That money has to be used to provide teachers some funds to, for them to be able to buy supplies that they desire to buy. And we all know that that's not
Now, the money that we have in the school projects and the discretionary balances that is really is in the schools, right? Now, you said the school board, we would have the right to take all that, to scrape all that from the schools if we chose to do so.
If you chose to do so, yes, you could do that. Now, that would be going against, your
I know.
adopted policy.
Right.
And then the other thing that I need to mention is, there are other projects, like, for example, there's reading reserves. Well, you can buy reading teachers with that, but you can't give raises. SAI, you can provide remediation services, but you can't take that money and just use it across the board to provide raises. So when you start looking, I guess what I'm trying to say is that when you start looking at those balances, you've got to dissect it to know, what would truly be available that you could use for funding any kind of raise versus the restrictions that are on various sources of that money.
And sweeping school funds
Okay, well,
reserves.
let's get back to where I started in this discussion. You kind of you're not, you still have.
Right, that's my question for Rita, as far as to explain the fund balances, and then is Mr. Foxworthy able to address the issue, the contractual obligation, and what the district's position is regarding that?
Contractual obligation is this, that we entered into a contract to provide a salary for a certain year. At the end of that year, we went into negotiations with the union to come with a different salary schedule. That salary schedule could be increased. That salary schedule could also be reduced. And the board's position, or the superintendent's position, was to reduce the salary schedule. Mr. Bush, is that?
I'd like to bring that like that.
Okay.
At any time, have you listened to that at the school board about our financial situation?
Absolutely not.
And how long have you been the CFO for this district, Rita?
I've actually been the CFO for this district since 2007.
And before that?
Before that, I was the budget director for 7 years. I've been here, I guess February I will have been here 11 years.
And what did you do before that?
I worked in finance for the Escambia County School District for 15 years.
That's all I have.
Okay. Okay, I'm assuming that at this point in time, each one of you has had those signs presented to you, and I'll say that I think Greg and Karen did a very good job, and, unfortunately, if I or whoever agrees or disagrees, that there's basically no winners in this thing. So, anyway, at this time, I'm calling for a motion.
I'll move the recommended motion as for the school district recommended motion.
I need a second.
I'll second.
A motion made, a motion, and a second. All in favor? 5 votes. Thank you. Appreciate everyone coming tonight.